It's December 2018. I'm one term away from finishing grad school. My oldest daughter's in her first year of college.
Okay, I'm done.
My other daughter is 2.5 years old and a ball of energy.
We're having a boy.
We are having a boy. And my son? He's only 5 weeks old. So my wife and I decided to do what any reasonable parents would do. We packed our bags and left the country for 3 months. We headed to Southeast Asia for what we could only imagine would be the adventure of a lifetime. Our plan? We start in Vietnam, and from there, we pretty much have no plan. We'd eat whatever we can, go wherever we want, spend time with family, make new friends, see the sights, but make sure we get off the beaten path. Shoot lots of video, and then make it into a vlog or documentary or something. And then we arrive. And reality kicks in. And what we actually end up doing? Was exactly that. Cheers. Traveling and exploring food have been two of the most important defining factors that have guided me in terms of how I live my life and what I want to give to my family. And now a third variable has entered the equation, a documentary format of storytelling. And I've traveled the world with an open mind, willing to experience almost anything, and I've done so with ease. Until I did it with an agenda, a job to do, and doing it all while still trying to make sure that we're having fun and being present in the moment. At the time that I'm making this video, I'm working through some ideas as to how to organize and publish the footage that I've come home with. But for now, I want to share a few things I learned. We decided to spend Christmas on Ha Long Bay. The floating villages, the layer of fog that was present for our entire trip, the eerie-looking pathways that our boat captain took us through, and the natural spectacles such as massive caves that we got to explore were nothing short of awe-inspiring. And we saw boats. A lot of boats. And those boats were loaded with people. A lot of people. Tourists, like us. My attention started to focus on the constant smell of exhaust, the trash floating in the water, and the anxious energy of the massive crowds rushing to take photos. I wanted to tell a story that would make for a good travel video, but I also felt compelled to not ignore the story I see, which is that I see a problem here. And whether it's economic desperation or flat-out exploitation of a natural treasure, I think it's important to at least acknowledge this story. It was a learning experience that helped me appreciate the conflict between objectivity and one's own unique personal perspective. One of our favorite restaurants back home is the popular Pak Pak, which serves authentic Thai and Vietnamese street food. The owner, two-time James Beard Award-winning chef Andy Ricker, had posted on Instagram that he'd be in the Chiang Mai area, and would be around the same time that we figured we'd get there. I thought of how perfect it would be to be able to interview one of my favorite celebrity chefs in the place where he learned how to cook these amazing dishes. So I messaged him a couple weeks in advance to ask him for an interview, and he said that he would be busy, but wished us a good time in Chiang Mai. But I still couldn't help but think about how great that would have been. We ended up staying in a rural town about 45 minutes north of the city to get away from the hustle and bustle of tourism, which was one of the best decisions we made on the whole trip. One night we were out for a walk and I noticed that the sky was especially colorful, purple and blue and orange in layers over the mountainous horizon. Later that night I was flipping through Instagram and I saw a photo of the same image from the same angle from pretty much the same distance, posted by Andy Ricker. I thought he must be really close to us. My wife nudged me to ask just one more time, which I was reluctant to do, but I ended up taking her advice and messaged him again. I ended the message by saying, I'm often reminded that the only regrets we have in life are the things that we choose not to do, and for that reason, I'm reaching out to you one more time. He responded and agreed to coffee and an interview.
I love the food culture here. That's a huge part of why I love this place. But I also like the way that Thai people look at life. I don't always understand it. As a matter of fact, I'd say that most of the time I don't understand everything that's going on around me, but I feel comfortable here. If I could move here permanently, I probably would.
Among the many things that came from that interview, I was reminded of what I learned and even taught others back in my sales training days. Be persistent. Respectful, but persistent. My dad always told me to never come up short on a birdie shot, which he said while we were playing golf and meant literally. I've taken it as more of a metaphor for life. Which kind of segues into we made our way to Angkor Wat, one of the largest and oldest temple complexes in the world. After our trip to Halong Bay, my expectations for heavily trafficked tourist destinations had been lowered a bit. But this did not disappoint at all. This was one of the most incredible structures I'd ever seen, and I couldn't get enough. It felt like a videographer's playground. The only downside, the heat and exposure to the sun, which we had to pay special attention to with two young kids. Okay, so we're leaving Angkor Wat now, and that was way cooler than I thought it was going to be, actually. After exploring for a bit, we took shelter under one of dozens of stalls serving traditional Cambodian food. Hot and exhausted from an emotional toddler breakdown and the constant bombardment of vendors, I just wanted to take a break and cool down a bit. While enjoying this relaxation, I noticed 5 Buddhist monks dressed in bright orange robes walking down the 1,100-foot-long stone-elevated path towards the gates of Angkor Wat, which was about 1,000 feet from where we sat. I watched them thinking about how great that would be for video, and I'm sure they're used to having cameras pointed at them so it wouldn't feel too intrusive. And this would really add some beautiful imagery to whatever I make out of this footage when I get home. And I just sat there. I couldn't muster up the mental energy to run across the dry field under the direct sun on this 100-degree day. I watched them make the long, slow walk out of the gates, and they were gone. And that was the most regrettable moment from a filmmaking stance that I had on the whole trip. It haunted me, and I never let something like that happen again. And beyond the benefits of great images and a better story from this work, it's what you gain in your personal development.
She's gonna be sick for a while, and that's obviously incredibly heartbreaking because she's not the lively, energetic Avery that we're used to.
I was trying to eat the hot dog through the phone. Our Avery's back, honey. This has been a long week.
Chickens, Daddy. Look at the roosters.
Whether it's the intense heat, the questionable water sources, the livestock and feral dogs in the streets, or the literal crumbling infrastructure, this is part of life in most of Southeast Asia, or at least what I've witnessed. It's usually the areas that don't exactly attract crowds or tourists that I tend to find myself in when I travel. I find these neighborhoods fascinating, but I don't want to make people feel like I'm capitalizing on their struggles. So I tend not to point my camera directly at people, especially children and people who look especially vulnerable. As I was taking a photo of a random alleyway, an elderly lady walked past me and said, "Oh yeah, take a photo of it. It's a shithole, right?" But that's not why I was taking the photo. I was taking the photo because I admired the positive energy that I felt. The music, the smell of food being grilled, the laughs of children running around, and though it may be difficult to capture this with an image, I was inspired to try. People started asking me to come take their picture. They'd ask me if I was a vlogger, what's my Instagram account, how can they follow me? It became clear how many people were happy that I was there to experience where they call home, realizing that I wasn't there to exploit them. As is often said with many disciplines, it's important to know the rules so you know how and when to break them. I think the same can be said for the rules we set for ourselves. Our last week of the trip, we decided to head south to Porto Galera, a beach resort community, in order to have some downtime before heading home. This is where I got some time to reflect on everything we just went through. And the single most important lesson I learned had little to do with Asia. It had to do with experiencing my daughter laying in a hospital bed and the fear of not knowing if she was going to be okay. It was a painful yet valuable reminder of how important it is to keep healthy and nurture those who I love the most, because they're my inspiration. They're the foundation of my empathy, creativity, and drive. And it's not where the story is told from. It's who it's about and who I get to share it with.